This is the DeLozier Show. You're listening to Season 1, The Murder of Linda Madison. I'm your host, DeLo. Before we begin, a content warning. This episode discusses suicide, pregnancy, domestic violence, and gun violence. Some of the content may be upsetting, especially to those who have experienced abuse or loss. If you or someone you know needs support, help is available by dialing 988 for mental health and suicide crises and at the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. You can also text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788 for support. Last episode, we overviewed the introduction of the murder, and we got to know a little bit about Joe Brooks, a 19-year-old with a troubled past and a violent present and a terrifying future. But what about the other life in this story? What about Linda? Today we go back to 1975 to meet Linda Madison, not just a name in a case file, but a teenager with hopes, questions, secrets, and a future that was stolen. Linda Madison was 18 years old. She lived in Yakima, Washington, a city in central Washington that, at the time, was a mix of agriculture, grit, and small-town values. Linda was known by some as quiet, kind, and thoughtful. She wasn't loud, she didn't make waves, but those who knew her well described her as someone who cared, someone who listened. She had friends, like most teens do. She had dreams, though some of them were still forming, and she had a secret. That's right, Linda was pregnant, a few months along. She hadn't told really everyone yet. At 18 years old and a senior in high school, that was a big weight to carry, especially in 1975. Today, the world has changed a bit, but back then, an unmarried teen girl facing an unplanned pregnancy carried the burden, not just of the child, but of the judgment, the shame, the social fallout. Linda wasn't yet a mother, but she was expecting. And according to reports, she was unsure of what to do. There were conversations, adoption, maybe even abortion. Nothing was set in stone. And maybe that's what makes this even more heartbreaking. Linda's life was full of questions and possibilities. There were a lot of choices she still had to make ahead of her. But on February 5th, 1975, those choices were all taken from her. We don't know everything about Linda's final day, but we do know this. She was staying at the home of Arlene Martin with her close friends and fellow Davis seniors, Dottie and Jackie Martin. Linda often stayed at the house, just a few doors down from where her family had lived. That night, everyone went to bed, but the door wasn't locked. It didn't need to be locked. It was 1975, and people just didn't expect someone to show up and shoot you in the middle of the night, especially someone you knew. Joe Brooks and Linda had been in a relationship. They had recently broken up. He had been coming around the house still, even after the breakup, sometimes showing signs of instability. But no one expected this. Sometime after the house was quiet that evening, Joe arrived. He entered the home and went into the room where Linda was sleeping. He brought with him a .22 caliber rifle. He had stuffed a potato over the barrel, attempting to create a makeshift silencer. He'd read somewhere, or maybe heard from someone, that it could work. Linda was shot. The bullet entered her head. Death was likely instant. Joe then ran. According to police reports and contemporary newspaper reports, the Yakima County Sheriff's Office received a call at 5:04 a.m. from Brooks himself, reporting a dead female at the 1205 East Meade Avenue residence. About 3 minutes later, a deputy arrived at that house. Everyone else in the house, including Dottie, Jackie, and Arlene, had all still been asleep. No one had heard the shot. Officers arrested Brooks at his home shortly afterward. A .22 caliber rifle was confiscated as possible evidence. Later on, an autopsy confirmed Linda's pregnancy. And while Joe would later confess, the questions did not stop. Why Linda? Was this an impulsive act, or was it premeditated? We know this much. Joe and Linda had a relationship. We also know that they had recently broken up. She had told others she didn't want him around, but Joe continued showing up at the house anyways, and that night he showed up with a loaded rifle. Linda's family was devastated. Her mother in particular struggled deeply. Not only had she lost a daughter, but the town's attention quickly shifted away from her daughter and to Joe, the boy with the rifle. Linda's story became secondary. But not here. Here, on this show, her story matters. Her voice matters. And today, we remember her, not for how she died, but for who she was becoming. A young woman with a complicated future. A girl named Linda. Linda's name may not appear in history books. There's no plaque. There's no annual remembrance. But every life matters. And sometimes, to make sense of the present, we have to honor the past. Next time, we'll look at an investigation, how the police narrowed in on Joe Brooks and what led to his arrest, and why some people still think there's more to the story. If you haven't already, please be sure to follow The DeLozier Show on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. And if this story moved you, share it. Remember Linda Madison. Until next time. The DeLozier Show is written, produced, edited, heck, I do everything by Ryan DeLozier. Special thanks to those of you out there helping preserve the stories. History forgotten. I want to thank Yakima Valley Regional Library as well, and Yakima Herald Republic for their articles that helped along with developing this podcast. And I want to thank you for listening. If you or someone you know is in crisis, help is available. For mental health or suicide support, you can call or text 988 anytime. For domestic violence help, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. You can also text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. You are not alone, and you are not without options.